Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant, staring at the stars beyond the viewport. His ship floated in the darkness of the Kuiper Belt, far from Earth, far from any prying eyes. For 47 years, humanity had been prisoners in their own solar system. The Galactic Council had made sure of that. It started when their ships appeared in Earth's sky back in 2300. Massive vessels that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. The aliens called themselves the Council, a group of 12 species that ruled most of the galaxy. They said they came in peace. They said Earth was special and needed protection. What they really meant was that humans were too primitive to join their club. Jake remembered being a young boy when the Council arrived. He watched the broadcasts with his father, filled with hope that humanity would finally reach the stars. That hope died quickly. The Council placed satellites around Earth that blocked all attempts to send messages into deep space. They built a station on Mars and told humanity to stay home. When Earth's leaders tried to negotiate, the Council ignored them. When scientists tried to leave the solar system, Council ships turned them back. Ambassador Karen Wright had spent 20 years trying to talk to the Council. She sent thousands of messages. She attended hundreds of meetings. The aliens treated her like a child asking adults for permission to play outside. Jake had met her once at a military briefing. He saw the frustration in her eyes, the anger she kept buried under diplomatic smiles. But the Council made a mistake. They thought humans would simply accept their fate. They thought Earth would sit quietly and wait for permission to join the galaxy. They were wrong. Jake walked through the corridors of his ship, past crew members who saluted as he passed. The Defiant was humanity's secret. One of 17 warships built in hidden facilities scattered throughout the outer solar system. It took 20 years to build this fleet. 20 years of mining asteroids for resources, 20 years of training in secret, 20 years of waiting. Dr. Lisa Chen worked in the ship's laboratory, studying pieces of alien technology. Earth had recovered several crashed Council scout ships over the decades. The aliens never came looking for them, probably thinking they were too primitive to learn anything. Lisa and her team took those ships apart piece by piece. They learned how Council engines worked. They copied their weapons. They improved on their designs. "How are the new torpedoes?" Jake asked as he entered the lab. Lisa looked up from her work. She was tired. They all were. "Ready for testing. The quantum disruption should shut down their shields completely. They won't know what hit them." "Let's hope we never have to use them," Jake said, though he didn't believe his own words. Admiral Ryan Blake commanded Earth's hidden military from a base carved into an asteroid near Neptune. He was old now, but his mind was sharp. He had been a young officer when the Council arrived. He watched them treat humanity like insects. He swore that one day Earth would show them the truth. The Admiral sat in his office, reviewing reports from observer teams stationed throughout the solar system. Every Council ship was tracked. Every alien movement was recorded. Earth knew their patrol schedules, their ship designs, their weapons capabilities. The Council thought humans were ignorant. They had no idea they were being watched. On Mars, Ambassador Zekthor delivered his annual report to the Council. The alien was tall and thin, with skin like gray stone and eyes that glowed faintly blue. He spoke about Earth's progress in condescending tones. Humans were learning, he said. In a few centuries, they might be ready to join civilized society. Until then, they needed guidance. They needed control. What Zekthor didn't know was that his communications were being intercepted. Everything he sent back to the Council passed through human listening posts. Earth heard every insult, every dismissive comment, every arrogant assumption. The aliens thought humans were emotional and primitive. They thought Earth's silence meant submission. Jake returned to the bridge and looked at the tactical display. 17 ships scattered across the solar system, hidden in asteroid fields and behind moons. The Patton under Colonel Amy Rodriguez. The Ranger commanded by young Lieutenant Ben Foster, the Midway, the Normandy, the Gettysburg. Each one was crewed by volunteers who gave up everything to train for a war they hoped would never come. But Jake knew war was coming. He could feel it. The Council was getting bolder. Their patrols came closer to Earth. Their demands became more aggressive. They wanted access to human research. They wanted to place inspectors on Earth itself. They wanted complete control. Karen Wright sent another message to the Council that morning. She requested a meeting to discuss expanding human rights in the solar system. The Council's response came back within an hour. Denied. Request inappropriate. Earth must learn patience. Jake clenched his fists. Patience. They had been patient for 47 years. How much longer did the aliens expect them to wait? How long before Earth could explore the stars like free people? He didn't have to wait long for an answer. 3 days later, a priority message came through from Earth Command. Council enforcement ships had detected energy signatures near Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. The message was brief and cold. Jake read it twice, unable to believe the words. The Council had fired on the research station. 247 people were dead. Scientists studying microbial life in Europa's oceans. Families who lived at the station. His own daughter Emma among them. Jake stood frozen on the bridge. His crew waited in silence, watching their captain. He could feel their eyes on him. They knew what this meant. After 47 years of silence, after decades of patience, the Council had finally crossed the line. Admiral Blake's message came through moments later. 3 words that changed everything. Operation Silent Thunder. Execute. Jake looked at his crew. He saw anger in their faces. He saw determination. Earth had stayed quiet long enough. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity's silence was never weakness. It was preparation. All hands, battle stations, Jake ordered. Send the signal to all fleet units. It's time to show the Council who we really are. The Defiant's engines roared to life in the darkness of space. Commander Vaxtool of the Crenari species watched the debris field through his ship's view screen. The human research station was gone, reduced to scattered metal and frozen bodies floating in Europa's orbit. His crew worked efficiently at their stations, showing no emotion. This was routine enforcement action, nothing more. Send the report to the Council, Vaxtool ordered. His voice carried the clicking accent of his species. Unauthorized technology development detected and eliminated. No Crenari casualties. The humans had been warned. The Council's rules were clear. No faster-than-light research, no weapons development, no attempts to leave their system. The energy signatures from Europa indicated possible violation of these protocols. Vaxtool didn't need to investigate further. Preventive action was authorized. The death of primitive species members was unfortunate but necessary. On Earth, the news spread like fire. Every screen, every device, every communication channel carried the same horrible images. The Europa Research Station had been home to scientists from 20 different countries. They studied the ocean beneath the moon's ice, searching for signs of microscopic life. Many brought their families. It was supposed to be humanity's first real colony beyond Earth and Mars. Now it was a graveyard. Jake Morrison sat alone in his quarters aboard the Defiant. He held a photo of his daughter, Emma. She was smiling in her research uniform, standing beside the drilling equipment she helped design. 28 years old, brilliant scientist, dead because the Council decided humans were breaking rules they never agreed to follow. Lieutenant Chris Parker found his captain an hour later. Chris had lost his wife in the attack, too. She worked in the station's communications center. The 2 men sat together in silence. There were no words that could make this better. There was only rage and the promise of justice. Ambassador Karen Wright demanded an emergency meeting with the Council. For the first time in 20 years, they agreed to see her. She traveled to the Mars station where Zekthor waited. The alien ambassador stood in his office, looking down at the human woman with barely concealed contempt. "The incident at Europa was necessary," Zekthor said before Karen could speak. "Your species was developing prohibited technology." "They were studying microbes," Karen said, her voice shaking with controlled anger. "Bacteria. Nothing that could possibly threaten the Council." Energy signatures indicated otherwise. "The matter is closed." Zekthor tapped his long fingers on the desk. "However, the Council has made a decision. Earth will be placed under quarantine status. Armed stations will be built throughout your system. Council inspectors will have full access to all human facilities and research." Karen stared at the alien. "You killed 247 people. You destroyed a civilian station, and now you want to occupy our system?" "The Council's decision is final. Your species needs stricter guidance. This incident proves humans are not ready for independence." Zekthor turned away, dismissing her. "You may leave." Karen Wright walked out of that office knowing diplomacy was finished. She sent an encrypted message to Earth Command. One sentence. "They're not listening. They never will." Admiral Blake gathered Earth's real leaders in a secure bunker beneath the Nevada desert. Presidents, generals, scientists, and business leaders from every nation. For decades, they kept the secret fleet hidden. They pretended to be helpless while building weapons and training soldiers. Now the time for pretending was over. Dr. Lisa Chen presented her findings to the assembled leaders. Her team had analyzed every Council ship they could observe. The aliens relied on centralized artificial intelligence systems to coordinate their fleet. Their shields operated on predictable frequencies. Their tactics followed rigid military doctrine. Most importantly, their commanders earned positions through politics, not combat experience. "They've never fought a real war," Lisa explained. "The Council expanded through intimidation and overwhelming numbers. Nobody challenged them because they seemed too powerful. But their technology has weaknesses we can exploit." Colonel Amy Rodriguez stood next to a holographic display showing the solar system. Red dots marked Council positions. Blue dots showed the hidden human fleet. "We have 17 ships against their 40 vessels in our system. On paper, we should lose, but we have advantages, better pilots, better tactics, and weapons they don't expect." Lieutenant Ben Foster, the youngest commander in the fleet, spoke up. "My crew is ready. Every crew is ready. Just give us the order." Admiral Blake looked at the faces around the table. He saw anger. He saw determination. He saw a species that had been pushed too far. "The vote is simple. Do we accept Council occupation or do we fight?" The vote was unanimous. Not a single dissenting voice. Earth would fight. Sergeant Laura Davis trained her Space Marines in a facility hidden inside an asteroid. 50 men and women prepared for boarding operations. They practiced in zero gravity. They learned to move in powered armor. They studied Council ship layouts stolen from captured databases. Every Marine volunteered knowing they might not survive. Every one of them had lost someone at Europa. "We're going to board their ships," Laura told her team. "We're going to capture their commanders. And we're going to make them answer for what they did." Meanwhile, Commander Vaxtol settled into his quarters aboard his flagship. The Council was sending reinforcements to the human system. Construction crews would begin building the occupation stations next week. He expected no resistance. The humans had no military worth mentioning. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were primitive. This would be an easy assignment. He didn't know that human listening posts had intercepted every Council communication. He didn't know about the fleet hiding in the darkness. He didn't know that Jake Morrison's ship was already moving into position, using stealth technology decades beyond anything the Council possessed. On Earth, people gathered in streets and homes, watching the news with horror and anger. The Council broadcast propaganda about bringing civilization to humanity. They showed images of their mighty warships. They promised order and guidance. What they didn't understand was that humans don't submit quietly. They fight. And when they fight to win. Jake Morrison stood on his bridge looking at his crew. Every station was manned by people who had trained for this moment. People who believed in Earth's right to freedom. People who were tired of being treated like children by arrogant aliens. "Send the signal to all fleet commanders," Jake ordered. "Operation Silent Thunder begins in 24 hours. The Council thinks we're weak. Tomorrow we show them the truth." Admiral Blake transmitted one final message to the entire solar system. It reached every human ship, every colony, every listening post. 3 simple words that echoed across human space. "Remember Europa. Attack." The Patton drifted silently through an asteroid field near Mars. Colonel Amy Rodriguez watched her tactical display, tracking 3 Council cruisers on patrol. Her ship was invisible to their sensors, hidden by stealth technology the aliens didn't know existed. The Council ships moved in predictable patterns, following the same routes they used every day. They felt safe. That would be their first mistake. Amy had been flying since she was 18. Fighter jets at first, then experimental spacecraft, and finally command of one of Earth's hidden warships. She specialized in hit-and-run tactics. Strike hard, strike fast, disappear before the enemy could respond. Her crew of 90 had trained together for 5 years. They knew each other's movements like dancers in a deadly ballet. "All systems ready, Colonel," her tactical officer reported. "Quantum torpedoes armed, engines at standby." "Good. We wait for the signal." Amy leaned back in her chair, forcing herself to remain calm. Her brother had died at Europa. He was a geologist studying the moon's mineral composition. The Council killed him without warning, without mercy, without even checking what he was really doing. Tomorrow, they would learn that mercy was not a human weakness. It was a choice. And that choice was now off the table. Lieutenant Ben Foster checked every system aboard the Ranger for the 3rd time. At 26, he was the youngest ship commander in the fleet. Some people thought Admiral Blake made a mistake giving him command. Ben intended to prove them wrong. His destroyer was smaller than the Patton, built for speed and precision strikes. He had 40 crew members, all of them hand-picked veterans. The Ranger hid behind Titan, Saturn's largest moon. 2 Council outposts sat on the moon's surface, monitoring human activity. The aliens used Titan's thick atmosphere to mask their sensor arrays. They thought they were clever. What they didn't know was that same atmosphere would hide Ben's attack run until it was too late. "Nervous?" his co-pilot asked. Ben smiled. "Terrified. But that's good. Fear keeps you sharp." Dr. Nicole Sanders made final adjustments to the quantum disruption torpedoes in the Defiance weapons bay. She was a physicist, not a soldier, but she understood what her weapons could do. The torpedoes generated a pulse that interfered with the energy patterns Council shields used. For about 30 seconds, their defenses would collapse completely. 30 seconds was more than enough time for human railguns to tear through their hulls. Nicole had argued against building these weapons at first. She believed in peaceful exploration, in learning from alien species, in joining the galactic community. Then the Council killed 247 people for doing science. Now she checked each torpedo personally, making sure they would work perfectly when the time came. Sergeant Laura Davis and her 50 Marines waited in the Defiance hangar bay. Their powered armor stood in neat rows, each suit painted black for stealth operations. Laura had chosen her team carefully. Every Marine had skills beyond just fighting. Engineers who could hack alien systems, medics who studied alien biology, linguists who learned Council languages. They would board enemy ships and capture the commanders responsible for Europa. "Remember," Laura told her team, "we're not murderers. We take prisoners when possible. But if they fight, we fight harder. Clear?" "Clear, Sergeant." 50 voices responded in unison. Jake Morrison reviewed the battle plan one last time. 17 human ships against 40 council vessels. The plan relied on surprise, speed, and the enemy's arrogance. Admiral Blake had positioned each ship strategically throughout the solar system. When the signal came, they would strike simultaneously at every council position. The key was the timing. If even one council ship managed to send a warning, reinforcements might arrive before Earth could secure the system. Every attack had to happen at exactly the same moment. Every council ship had to be disabled or destroyed before they knew what hit them. Chris Parker entered the bridge carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Jake without speaking. The 2 men had barely slept in 3 days. Grief and anger kept them awake, planning every detail of the coming battle. "Emma would have wanted us to be smart about this," Chris finally said. "Not just angry." "We're being both," Jake replied. "Smart enough to win, angry enough to never forget why we're fighting." On Mars, Commander Vaxtool inspected the construction site for the first occupation station. Human workers, forced to labor under Council supervision, moved slowly and sullenly. The Krenari commander didn't care about their feelings. They were primitives. They would learn to obey or face consequences. What Vaxtool didn't notice was that the human workers were actually intelligence officers, gathering information about Council troop positions and ship locations. Every detail was transmitted to Admiral Blake's headquarters. The Council thought humans were conquered. They had no idea they were being studied. Ambassador Zekthor sat in his office on Mars, composing his weekly report to the Council. He wrote about human compliance and the successful elimination of the Europa threat. He recommended stricter controls and more oversight. The Council would be pleased. His career would advance. Perhaps a promotion to the inner council itself. He never considered that his communications were being intercepted. He never imagined that humans had cracked council encryption years ago. Every message he sent gave Earth more intelligence about council operations, politics, and military capabilities. Dr. Lisa Chen worked through the night in her laboratory, running final simulations. The quantum disruption torpedoes would work, she was certain, but she had also prepared a backup plan. If the Council adapted to the torpedoes somehow, her team had developed electromagnetic pulse missiles that could fry their computer systems. And if those failed, there were plasma charges designed to superheat their armor until it melted. Lisa believed in being prepared. She also believed in overwhelming force. The Council had superior numbers. Earth needed superior technology to balance the scales. Admiral Blake stood in the command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing every human ship and every Council vessel. His staff worked quietly at their stations. Everyone knew the attack would begin soon. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. "All ships report ready status," his communications officer announced. Blake nodded. 17 ships scattered across 8 planets and dozens of moons, thousands of personnel who had trained in secret for years, families who said goodbye to their loved ones knowing they might never return. All of it leading to this moment. "Send the preliminary signal," Blake ordered. Code word, Hammer. All units go to final battle stations. Attack begins in 12 hours. Across the solar system, human ships received the message. Crews checked weapons one last time. Pilots reviewed their attack runs. Marines sealed their armor. Engineers brought reactors to full power. Every person knew their role. Every person was ready. Jake Morrison looked at the photo of Emma one more time before putting it away. His daughter had believed in exploring the stars, in peaceful discovery, in humanity's potential for greatness. The Council took that dream and burned it. Now Jake would take something from them. Their arrogance, their sense of superiority, their comfortable belief that humans were too weak to fight back. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake announced over the ship-wide intercom. "In a few hours we attack. The Council thinks we're primitive. They think we're helpless. They think we'll accept whatever they do to us. They're wrong. We've been preparing for this fight since the day they arrived. We've been learning. We've been building. We've been waiting. Tonight, the waiting ends. Tonight, Earth roars. The crew of the Defiant erupted in cheers. The sound echoed through every deck, every corridor, every compartment. It was the sound of a species that had been silent for too long. It was the sound of justice coming for those who thought themselves untouchable. 12 hours until the attack. The council slept peacefully, confident in their power. They had no idea that morning would bring fire and fury they could never imagine. Admiral Blake stood in the command center watching the countdown timer, 3 minutes until the attack. Around him, staff officers monitored every human ship in the fleet. This was the moment 47 years of preparation came down to. Either humanity would win its freedom, or the Council would crush them completely. There was no middle ground. "All ships report ready," the communications officer announced. "Weapons armed, targets locked." Blake took a deep breath. He thought about the children killed at Europa. He thought about decades of being treated like primitives. He thought about every insult, every dismissal, every condescending word from the Council. Then he pressed the button that transmitted a single message across all Council frequencies. "You killed our children. Now learn why we stayed silent." The Defiant dropped its stealth field and appeared directly behind the Council flagship. Commander Vaxtol's ship had no time to react. Jake Morrison gave the order and quantum disruption torpedoes launched from multiple tubes. The weapons struck the flagship's shields, and for 30 seconds those shields simply stopped working. Human railguns opened fire. Solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds tore through the flagship's hull. Explosions rippled across its surface. Vaxtool stumbled on his bridge, alarms screaming around him. His crew shouted in panic. This was impossible. The humans had no weapons that could do this. "All ships! Evasive maneuvers!" Vaxtool ordered. But it was too late. The Defiant's guns continued firing, methodically destroying the flagship's engines and weapons. Within 2 minutes, the Council's most powerful warship in the system was drifting helplessly, leaking atmosphere and life support failing. Jake didn't stop there. His tactical display showed Council ships throughout the system, all under attack simultaneously. The plan was working perfectly. Near Mars, Colonel Amy Rodriguez brought the Pattons screaming out of the asteroid field. Her ship moved in ways Council vessels couldn't match, spinning and diving through space with impossible agility. Human pilots trained for zero-gravity combat since childhood. They understood momentum and vectors in ways aliens didn't. 3 Council cruisers tried to form a defensive line. Amy split her attack, firing quantum torpedoes at 2 ships while launching fighters at the 3rd. The torpedoes disabled shields, just as her railguns found their targets. 1 cruiser exploded completely. The 2nd lost power and began tumbling. The 3rd cruiser managed to fire back, but Amy was already gone, using Mars itself as cover. She circled the planet, came up behind the enemy, and destroyed its engines with surgical precision. 3 ships eliminated in under 5 minutes. No human casualties. "Mars orbital space clear," Amy reported. "Moving to secondary targets." At Titan, Lieutenant Ben Foster's Ranger dove through the moon's thick atmosphere. Council sensors couldn't track him through the chemical clouds. The 2 outposts on the surface launched defensive missiles, but they were firing blind. Ben knew exactly where they were. His ship's weapons locked onto their positions and fired. Plasma charges streaked through Titan's atmosphere and slammed into the Council outposts. The buildings exploded in brilliant flashes visible from orbit. Ben pulled up sharply, breaking through the upper atmosphere just as 3 Council destroyers arrived to investigate. The enemy ships were faster than Ben expected. They locked weapons on the Ranger and opened fire. Ben twisted his ship sideways, letting the energy beams pass harmlessly by. Then he activated the Ranger's secret weapon, electromagnetic pulse missiles that Dr. Nicole Sanders had designed specifically to fry Council computer systems. The missiles detonated near the destroyers, releasing waves of electromagnetic energy. Council ships relied heavily on artificial intelligence to coordinate systems. When that AI crashed, the ships became floating metal boxes. Human crews could override failed computers. Council crews had never learned how. 3 more down, Ben reported, barely able to contain his excitement. Titan is secure. The battle for Earth's solar system raged for 6 hours. Human ships struck from unexpected angles. They used the environment, planets, moons, asteroids, as weapons and shields. They fought with creativity and desperation that Council forces had never encountered. Dr. Nicole Sanders monitored the battle from the Defiance weapons lab. Her quantum torpedoes performed flawlessly, 93% hit rate. Every hit disabled Council shields long enough for human weapons to strike. She was already designing improvements for the next generation. There would be a next generation. Humanity would never be helpless again. Sergeant Laura Davis and her Marines launched from the Defiant in armored boarding pods. Their target was Commander Vaxtool's crippled flagship. The pods attached to the ship's hull, and cutting torches burned through the armor. Laura was first through the breach, her powered armor making her nearly unstoppable. Council soldiers tried to defend their ship. They wore light armor and carried energy weapons. Laura's team wore heavy combat suits and used kinetic weapons designed to work in any environment. The fight was brutally one-sided. Marines moved through the corridors like a storm, taking prisoners when possible, eliminating threats when necessary. Laura found Commander Vaxtool on his bridge, surrounded by dying crew members. The Krenari commander tried to draw his weapon. Laura shot it out of his hand and threw him against the wall. Her suit's strength amplification made the alien feel light as a toy. "You're under arrest for war crimes," Laura said through her helmet speakers. 247 counts of murder. You're going to stand trial." Vaxtool stared at the human in shock. "The Council will destroy your world for this." "The Council is busy losing this fight," Laura replied. She bound his hands with magnetic restraints and dragged him toward the boarding pod. "You're going to answer for what you did. That's justice, something you never gave our people." As the battle continued, something unexpected happened. Council ships began surrendering. Their crews saw the fight was lost. They watched superior human tactics tear apart their fleet. They realized their commanders had lied about how primitive Earth was. Admiral Blake received surrender signals from 15 Council vessels. He accepted them but kept weapons locked on every ship. Trust needed to be earned. The Council had destroyed any good faith humanity might have offered. Ambassador Karen Wright transmitted Earth's message to the entire galaxy. It included footage from Europa, bodies floating in space, the destroyed station, the children who died. It showed Council ships firing without warning or investigation. Then it showed the battle itself, human ships outmaneuvering and outfighting Council forces. "For 47 years we stayed silent," Karen said in the broadcast. "We accepted your rules. We waited for permission to explore our own galaxy. You treated us like children. You ignored our diplomacy. You killed our people. Today, silence ends. Today, you face the consequences." The message was clear. Earth was no longer asking for permission. They were taking their freedom by force. Jake Morrison returned to the Defiance bridge after securing the flagship. His ship had sustained minor damage, but nothing critical. His crew was tired, but victorious. Around the solar system, other human ships reported similar success. 40 Council vessels destroyed or captured. 17 human ships still operational. Some damage, some injuries, but no ships lost. "Send a message to all Council forces still in our system," Jake ordered. "You have 72 hours to withdraw completely. Anyone who remains after that deadline will be considered hostile and destroyed. No negotiations, no exceptions." The Council forces began retreating immediately. Their ships limped toward the system's edge, heading for the nearest Council outpost. They transmitted requests for reinforcements, for orders, for help. The answers they received shocked them. The Council itself was in chaos. 5 member species had seen the battle footage and broke away from the Alliance. They refused to fight Earth. Some even sent secret messages offering to share information about Council military weaknesses. The whole structure was crumbling. On Mars, Ambassador Zekthor watched his world collapse. The humans he had dismissed as primitives had destroyed the Council fleet. His career was over. His species would face questions about their role in the Europa massacre. He considered fleeing, but knew there was nowhere to run. Earth's intelligence network had spread throughout the galaxy during 47 years of forced silence. "Send a message to Earth Command," Zekthor said quietly to his aide. "Tell them I'm resigning my position. Tell them I will cooperate with their investigation." Admiral Blake received the message and smiled grimly. Victory was complete. The Council had learned the hardest lesson in galactic history. Never underestimate those you oppress. They might be preparing while you think they're submitting, and when they finally fight back, they fight with everything they have. Earth had roared. The galaxy was listening now. 6 months after the battle, Jake Morrison walked through the rebuilt Europa research station. Construction crews had worked continuously to restore what the Council destroyed. The new station was larger and stronger, with defensive systems that could protect against any attack. Memorial walls lined the central corridor, displaying the names of all 247 people who died. Jake stopped at his daughter Emma's name. Someone had placed flowers there, floating gently in the low gravity. He touched the engraved letters and felt the weight of everything that had happened. The war that followed her death. The victory that came too late to save her. The future she would never see. "She would be proud of what you built here," a voice said behind him. Jake turned to see Dr. Lisa Chen. She had been appointed as Earth's first ambassador to the new Galactic Assembly. Her ship was leaving tomorrow to establish humanity's embassy on a neutral world. "I hope so," Jake replied. "We named the new biology lab after her." "That's fitting." Lisa walked beside him through the station. "The Council representatives arrive next week for the trial. Commander Vaxtol and 37 others will face charges. The galaxy is watching." The trial was being held on Titan, neutral territory chosen by the 5 species that broke away from the Council. Those 5 had formed the core of the new Galactic Assembly, an organization built on equality rather than domination. Earth was invited as a founding member. The remaining Council species had no choice but to accept if they wanted to remain part of galactic civilization. Colonel Amy Rodriguez commanded the Solar Defense Force now. Her fleet had grown to 50 ships, all built openly with help from allied species who wanted to ensure the Council could never threaten anyone again. She sat in her office on Mars, reviewing defense plans with officers from 3 different alien species. "The key is distributed command," Amy explained, pointing to a holographic star map. "No single point of failure. Every ship and station can operate independently if needed. That's how Earth survived. That's how the galaxy stays free." A Velan officer, part of one of the species that broke from the Council, clicked his mandibles in agreement. "Your tactics were studied at our military academy." Many generals resigned in shame after seeing how poorly we prepared for actual combat. Amy smiled. "The Council relied on fear and overwhelming numbers. We relied on skill and determination. I'm glad we can share what we learned." Lieutenant Ben Foster had been promoted to captain and given command of humanity's first deep space exploration mission. His ship, the Discovery, was preparing to venture beyond the solar system for the first time in 47 years. His crew included humans and aliens working together, the kind of partnership Earth had always wanted. "We launch in 3 days," Ben told his mixed crew during a briefing. "Our mission is simple. Explore, learn, make friends. Show the galaxy what humanity really stands for. And if we meet hostile forces? Asked a human security officer. We defend ourselves, Ben replied. But we don't go looking for fights. We've proven we can win wars. Now we prove we can win peace. Sergeant Laura Davis trained the next generation of Space Marines. Her program was open to volunteers from any species. She taught them that strength meant protecting the innocent, not bullying the weak. Her Marines would be peacekeepers, not conquerors. The Council made a mistake, Laura told her recruits. They thought military power meant they could do whatever they wanted. Real strength is knowing when to fight and when to talk. Never forget that. On Titan, the war crimes trial began. Commander Vaxtul stood in a courtroom filled with observers from dozens of species. Judges from the 5 breakaway species presided. Earth provided evidence, recordings, testimony, wreckage from Europa. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy. Vaxtul tried to defend his actions. He claimed he was following Council protocol. He said the energy signatures justified his attack. He insisted the deaths were unfortunate but necessary. Every word made him look worse. Ambassador Karen Wright testified about 47 years of trying diplomacy while the Council ignored Earth. She spoke calmly and clearly, describing every attempt to communicate, every request denied, every insult endured. When she finished, several judges had tears in their eyes. The verdict took 3 days. Guilty on all counts. Vaxtul and his officers were sentenced to life imprisonment on a penal colony. Other council officials faced lesser sentences but permanent removal from authority. The message was clear. War crimes would be punished. No one was above justice. Admiral Ryan Blake retired after the trial ended. He had spent his entire career preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now that war was won, he wanted to rest. He gave a final speech to Earth's military academy. We stayed silent because we were preparing, Blake told the young officers. We endured insults because we were learning. We accepted restrictions because we were building. And when they crossed the line, we were ready. That's the lesson I want you to remember. Patience isn't weakness, it's strategy. But know when patience ends and action begins. Dr. Nicole Sanders continued her research, but now she worked with scientists from multiple species. Together, they developed technology for exploration and defense. The quantum disruption torpedoes that won the war were now shared with allied species to ensure everyone could defend themselves. Science should bring people together, Nicole said in an interview. The Council used technology to maintain power. We'll use it to ensure freedom. That's the difference between them and us. Ambassador Zekthor cooperated fully with investigators. He provided information about Council operations, admitting to his role in decades of oppression. He resigned from all positions and returned to his homeworld in disgrace. His own people removed his family name from official records. His legacy was shame. Jake Morrison was offered command of the Solar Defense Force. He declined. Instead, he became the first human ambassador to the Galactic Assembly. His job was ensuring this never happened again, not to Earth. Not to any species. He sat in his new office on the assembly station, looking at a star map showing hundreds of species and thousands of worlds. This was what Emma had dreamed about. Not war, but exploration and friendship. Jake would honor her memory by building the peaceful galaxy she believed in. Lisa Chen stood beside him, preparing for her first diplomatic mission. "Do you think we can really change the galaxy?" she asked. "We already did," Jake replied. "We showed that bullies can be stopped, that victims can become victors, that silence can hide strength. Every species that was afraid of the Council now knows they don't have to be. We gave them hope." Months turned into years. The Galactic Assembly grew. More species joined. Trade and cooperation replaced threats and intimidation. Earth's solar system became a hub of activity. Ships from dozens of worlds visited regularly. Humans traveled to alien planets and were welcomed. The Europa research station reopened with full operations. Scientists from multiple species worked there together. They discovered the microscopic life Emma and her team had been searching for. The announcement was made on the anniversary of her death. Jake was there when they named the new organisms Emmabacteria, in honor of the scientist who died trying to find them. Ben Foster's Discovery returned from its first mission with maps of 12 new solar systems and peaceful contact with 3 previously unknown species. His crew recommended all 3 for Galactic Assembly membership. Humanity's reputation as explorers and friends spread across the galaxy. Amy Rodriguez's defense forces never had to fire a shot in anger. Their presence alone was enough to deter threats. Former Council species that once considered attacking Earth now requested joint training exercises. The students had become teachers. Laura Davis opened a peacekeeping academy that accepted recruits from any species. Her graduates served throughout the galaxy, protecting the weak and stopping conflicts before they became wars. The Council had ruled through force. The Assembly ruled through justice. On Earth, children grew up knowing they could reach the stars. Schools taught multiple alien languages. Museums displayed artifacts from dozens of cultures. Humans married aliens. Families mixed species. The future Emma dreamed of was becoming reality. 10 years after the battle, Jake stood at the Europa Memorial again. The station was full of life now. Researchers from 50 different species worked there. The ice moon that had been a symbol of tragedy became a symbol of hope and cooperation. A young human girl, maybe 8 years old, approached Jake. She wore a student uniform from one of the station's schools. "Are you Ambassador Morrison?" she asked. "I am," Jake replied. "My teacher said you fought the Council, that you freed Earth." The girl looked up at the memorial wall. Was it scary? Jake thought about how to answer. Yes, very scary. We didn't want to fight. But sometimes when someone hurts innocent people, you have to stand up. Not because you want to, but because it's right. "Did we win?" the girl asked. Jake looked around the station. Humans and aliens working together. Children from different species playing in the recreation areas. Scientists making discoveries that helped everyone. "Yes," he said. "We won. And we're still winning. Every day we choose peace over war, cooperation over domination, justice over revenge." The girl smiled and ran back to her class. Jake watched her go, thinking about Emma. His daughter never got to see this future, but she helped create it. Her death wasn't meaningless. It was the spark that lit a fire across the galaxy. Earth had stayed silent for 47 years. Not from fear, but from preparation. When the Council crossed the line, humanity responded with overwhelming force. But after the battle came something more important. They built peace. They created the Galactic Assembly. They proved that strength doesn't mean domination. Jake looked at the stars visible through the station windows. Somewhere out there, Ben Foster was exploring new worlds. Somewhere, Laura Davis was training peacekeepers. Somewhere, species that had been afraid were learning they could be free. The galaxy learned its lesson. Never underestimate those you oppress. They might surprise you. And when Earth finally spoke, the galaxy listened. It was still listening, learning that the small blue planet had more to teach than anyone imagined. Earth stayed silent, until the Council crossed the line. Then Earth roared, and the roar became a voice for freedom that echoed across the stars.